If all has gone correctly, you will no longer see your own reflection, but you will be looking at the devil. Or at least, looking at the way the devil has chosen to appear to you. Chances are, he won't look like your conventional, red, horned demon with goat legs and a pitchfork, nor any other sort of terrible apparition. No point scaring you off now. Better to lure you in, and make you feel safe. To that end, he generally takes on the appearance of a fairly average, nondescript human being. If anything, he's prone to vanity, and will lean more towards the attractive end of the spectrum. The only really frightening part of him will be his eyes. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot hide the sinister gleam smoldering deep within them. That malevolent amusement and hunger, like the eyes of a spider contemplating a fly struggling in a web. They're supremely confident, those eyes. Confident and without pity. Don't look into them too deep, or you'll begin to feel helpless and paralyzed with dread, losing your hope and your will to fight. Since you'll probably be staring at him and staring back for a few moments in shock, having some level of expectation for this ritual to fail, he will initiate the conversation by asking you what it is you desire from him. If you can gather your wits enough to string a coherent sentence, you should respond with something like, "I wish to challenge you to a game of questions and responses." Even if you don't get the words exactly right, he'll know what you mean, and he'll accept with a wide grin of anticipation. He's been playing this game for a long time, you see, and he's very good at it. Most humans, on the other hand, are very bad at it. This gives him a chance to, at the very least, thoroughly mess with your mind. And at most, well, we'll save that for the shit that could go wrong section. You'll have to play it very smart to avoid justifying his expectations. The general rules of the game are very simple, with few caveats that can make things more complicated. He'll begin by asking you a question, for he always initiates the game. It can be anything from a piece of obscure trivia, to a riddle, to an extremely personal inquiry. Don't worry, you won't be immediately plugged into hell if you get the wrong answer or anything like that. As a matter of fact, he won't even tell you whether you got the answer right or wrong. After you've answered his question, you get to ask him one in return. Now here's where the consequences of your response come in. If you've answered his last question correctly, he will respond to your question as honest and accurately as he is able. However, if you answered it incorrectly, he is free to lie to you as he sees fit. Perhaps if you've asked him something you're better off not knowing, he'll tell you the truth about it anyway. More likely, he'll feed you the most insidious, dangerous lie he can come up with. Either way, after he's responded to your question, he'll ask you another question, and the process will repeat itself over and over again until you decide to call it quits. Now, you might be sitting there thinking this sounds fairly easy to get information out of the guy. All you've got to do is wait for a question you can answer correctly, and then take that opportunity to ask him what you really want to know, ignoring everything else he said. Well, it's not that simple. The devil will never give you an easy question, one that you can be completely sure of the answer to. He may instead give you a question that you have some vague knowledge of, that you think maybe you know the answer to, but aren't really confident, thus forcing you to endlessly second-guess yourself, obsessing over whether or not you can trust the information that he gave you next. Perhaps you'll think that what he said was a lie, wish it was a lie, but be eternally consumed by doubt, unable to fully convince yourself that you were wrong. Or perhaps you'll have to make a huge choice based on the information he gave you, and be tormented by the fear and indecisiveness as you realize that your fate, and perhaps the fate of others as well, rests entirely upon whether or not you were able to correctly recall some arcane piece of trivia that you don't even remember now. And you'll never be able to remember the exact question the devil asked you, by the way. That would make it too easy for you to go back and check your responses. Or maybe, instead of testing your knowledge, He'll ask you something personal, something you even lie to yourself about. You'll answer back to him, thinking you've got the question correct, something like, "No, I don't resent my sister." Or, "Yes, I would turn that money into the police." But he'll know better. He'll know better than you do that you're lying, and he'll lie to you in return, and you'll believe him. You'll believe him until you are no longer able to deceive yourself, and by then, it might be too late. Or maybe he won't give you a chance to get an accurate response at all. Maybe he'll just ask you an endless string of completely impossible questions, making you more and more frustrated and disheartened as you realize you will never be able to force him to tell you the truth. Questions like, what is the exact height of Mount Everest in centimeters in the year 1666? Or, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Although, knowing his sense of humor, if you ever asked the latter, he might consider African or European as a correct response. There are a couple of ways to short-circuit this particular strategy, however. Additional rules and courses of action that might make the game more interesting and prevent you from being stonewalled completely. Although, in all honesty, he probably wants for you to try one of these options anyway. The first option is to ask him a riddle instead of a question. If you somehow manage to stump him, and he answers the riddle wrong or gives up, he'll be obligated to give you a truthful response to your next question. If he answers the riddle correctly, once again, don't worry. He won't pounce on you like a sphinx or drag you into hell. What will happen is that he will get a pass, allowing him to lie in response to one question he would otherwise be obligated to answer truthfully. Honestly, if he gets a pass, you might as well just give up and quit the game right there. It's nearly impossible to determine when he's telling the truth under the best of conditions, and adding another layer of complexity by constantly trying to figure out if he's used his past is about enough to make any normal person's brain explode. There's no way. Just forget it. The second option is for you to take a dare from him. If you accept and vow to follow through, then once again he'll have to answer your next question truthfully. If you choose instead to reject it, he'll get another pass. Now, before you freak out and reject this whole idea completely, you should know that he won't ask you to do anything overly dramatic or unspeakably evil, like blow up a hospital or murder anything. As a rule of thumb, most dares don't involve direct loss of life or major felonies. However, they certainly won't be easy. Inflicting severe pain upon yourself, doing something that terrifies the shit out of you, cutting off a treasured relationship, publicly humiliating yourself or a loved one, all these things and more, things you might not even be able to imagine, are completely on the table. If you're willing to go that far and put yourself in that kind of position, you'll get your answer. However, if he manages to come up with the one thing you simply cannot or will not do, well then, once again, you might as well just quit. One last thing. Don't think you can just tell him you're going to do something and then not do it. If you accept the dare and then don't follow through with it, well, let's just say there will be consequences. Just suck it up and keep your promise, no matter what it is. Trust me, you'll be better off that way. Finally, when you've either gotten the information you wanted or given up on it completely, you may end the ritual by simply thanking the devil for accepting your request, bowing politely at the waist, and bidding him farewell. The surface of the mirror will seem to swim and flicker for a moment, and then you will be looking at your own reflection again. Only when you are absolutely certain that you are looking at your own two eyes again will you be able to turn away from the mirror, flick the lights back on, and begin dismantling your protections. Now, and this is important, even if you've gotten the information you wanted, you must end the ritual in this manner before 66 minutes have elapsed. Well, I suppose technically you have 66 minutes and 6 seconds. But if you're seriously going to try and cut it that close without any kind of timekeeping device, you're probably screwed anyway. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you keep to the time limit. I'll save the reason behind that for the end, but don't skip ahead. I've still got a few important tips on how to play.